Ma, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Happy
Good.
Saturday.
Happy Saturday. Yeah. Hanging out here in beautiful, bright, safe Woodbridge, Virginia.
Nice.
Yeah. Living it up. So we are about halfway through the podcast. Then most of the family is still chasing people around, but been going pretty well so far. A lot of them already posted up, so pretty cool.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. What's going on with you?
Not a whole lot. Getting ready for
No.
the holidays, getting ready for our trip.
Yep.
Excited to see you there
Mm-hmm.
and my aunts and uncle and cousins. It'll be great.
Yep. Going down to Florida to see Auntie Gail,
Hmm.
see the squad. See
See the
everyone's.
whole squad.
Yep. Good.
So I was in the middle of packing and then thinking I was getting ahead. And then Sam went skiing and he said, I need a suitcase. So I had to unpack everything. Here you go, bud.
Yeah, where's he up? Is he up in New Hampshire? Vermont?
Attitash.
Attitash?
Yeah. So I packed him up a whole refrigerator worth of food yesterday. And him and Lily went off.
Nice. I didn't know he could ski. Is he going
I
skiing?
don't I don't think he knows he can ski,
He'll figure it out. It's
but
nothing.
he always does.
Yeah, it's not that hard. You can figure it. Well, good. Yeah, we used to go skiing a lot. Well, that's not true. We would go skiing. We have been skiing together as a family. Not necessarily a lot. That's a bold statement. But I remember you'd bring us up to New Hampshire a few times. Where was that? Nashua?
Bradford.
Bradford.
We went to
Bradford.
Bradford a few times for skiing lessons. Yeah, your little
Yeah.
snowsuits with all your tickets on it. Looked like we were all that. I
Yeah.
was really in the lodge having hot chocolate, watching you take
Yeah.
lessons.
Yeah, doing the skiing, doing the freaking pizza. I mean, the pizza and the French fry, the pizza and the French fry.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
yeah,
Dad and I were just talking about skiing this morning, how we went when we were Sam's age, and we were just like, we're all done with it. Then we went cross country. Like, what were we thinking, right?
cross country skiing. Oh, I
Yeah, I think that's why we don't ski.
don't know.
That sounds
Yeah,
like a good reason.
yeah, yeah. People are always asking me to go and like, oh, do you snowboard? I'm like, no, but maybe I'll get back into it here soon.
Yeah, you did snowboard for a bit too.
Yeah, a little bit, and then we have the ones in the backyard, or we go over to like Hillview and snowboard over there and stuff, but never anything too crazy. So
No.
we'll see. Get back into it a bit, maybe.
Go sledding down Hillview with Dad and his pink hat and scarf on.
Yeah, try not to crack
The
a
meat
crack.
missile. Psh.
Yeah. Yeah, it was scary over there because it was the sand pits. So you'd
Yeah,
come down and it'd look flat, and then you'd fly like 20 feet in the
that
air.
was all ice. There was always ambulances there.
Yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
you're taking the kids to the hood, right? Yeah, sure. Then everybody's like, oh, I just saw them up at the Hillview. I'm like, oh, great. Just don't even tell me.
yeah. I remember the hood school had really steep downhills, but then it kind of like leveled off into just like a plain field.
Yeah.
I remember I cracked my head open once, and we were going down the backside into like the backstop, and I hit my head on like that big metal box that was back there or something.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
That's right. And you got stitches.
yeah. I got glue. I think I got
Yeah,
glue
you
up
did.
here.
You did
Yeah.
get glue. You got a lot of stuff going on your head.
I know. I got a lot of brain injuries. I think a lot of head injuries.
For a
Not
mother
I.
who's so protective. Wear a
Yeah,
helmet. Don't go. You can't go around the block.
yeah. It didn't work out too well. That's all
No.
right. That's okay. Um, cool. Well, I guess we can start from the beginning. Let's start from way back when, 60s, 60s. Yeah,
Wish we could go back to the 60s.
yeah. What was it like? Want to tell a little bit about growing up and your childhood and things like that?
So I grew up in Everett, grew up on Bennett Street. And it's funny, I was just thinking about when you start talking about sledding. We used to sled down. I lived on it was a hill. We used to just sled down the hill into like traffic. Like, just never worried about anything. No one wore a helmet. Um, our neighborhood was very busy neighborhood. A lot of kids. One side to me, the Taylors, they had 11 kids. The Siavacos were there. Who Christine is now your aunt, my sister-in-law, married to Dad's brother. Almost every house had kids. To the left of me was Millie and Jim. They were a black couple. They were like our second parents. Um, And I mentioned that they were black because it just, at the time, I think there were only like 5 black people in Everett, you know? Um, and they commanded a lot of respect. They scared the death out of us, but they were like our second parents. They were very good to us, and they were very good to my parents and my family as well. So, um, we'd go over there and play cards with them and, eat snack mix that she'd make, and it was awesome.
It's good.
60s and 70s was a great time to grow up.
Yeah. Yeah, outside all day, running around with the neighborhood squad.
Yeah. Playing games like Ringalario and hide and seek and whatever.
What's Ringalario?
It was like a hide and seek game, just an elevated version of it.
Oh, never heard of it.
Yeah.
Huh.
You have to Google it.
Okay. I'll give it a Google.
I mean, we walked to school. We never took buses. We never, even till high school, we walked until we got cars. I mean, it was just a different time.
Yeah. Auntie Christine grew up around you guys. Were you guys like friends growing up, or were you
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was more friends with her. Her sister and I was more my age. But Christine and I were. She was 2 years younger than me. She was always cool to hang out with. So we were always friendly through high school, and she'd go out with me, and that's how she met Paul. Because me and Dad and hang around the same circle, so it was good.
Mm-hmm. What? How far away was Cece from you guys?
Next street over. So,
Yeah.
if you looked out my front door, there was a street that went straight across, and then his street was the next one that ran parallel to ours, Central Street. So we would walk to school in the morning, not that street, the street up above, and he would be out there every morning waving the curtain at us as we went by, just so we knew he was there.
Funny.
And then behind those streets, right before you got to the school, this was an elementary school, was something called the Cow Path. And it was probably there for me, like, when there's actually cows there, but not in our age. We'd have to walk through this little path. They called it the Cow Path. And it's funny, I vividly remember being like in second grade, and I wore this really long dress. I saw someone post it online the other day too. Like girls wore like long dresses and it was just a style. And I had worn it to a wedding, and then the principal sent something home saying you can't wear that. No one can wear long skirts to school anymore. And so the next day, I wore it. Which surprises me. My mother and I were just like, no, I'm wearing this. I was going to wear this dress to school. And I was a rule follower too, so I'm surprised I did this. I was that, so I got sent home. I just remember walking alone through the cow path, which is my whole story in this long, pretty dress. Looked like I just came out of a little house on the prairie. But it's funny, like you wouldn't let your kid walk down the cow path alone today,
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting.
Yeah. So, and then in third grade, I was taken out of that school because they were not taken. I don't want to sound like it was forcefully, but they tested kids for academic intelligence at the time. It was called ATC, which is so funny, academically talented children. So they tested all of us, and I was absent the day they tested us. So my path could have gone a different way, but they retested me when I came back, and they moved us into different schools. There was a group of us, maybe 2 classrooms of us, that stayed together up to high school. So we were moved to a different school for 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade. We didn't stay with our peers in our neighborhood, which probably added into the singling out of me, in some respect. But I was with those kids up to graduation in high school. So it was a good group of kids.
Nice. And then when you went back to middle school, you kind of came back in with everybody else?
No, all the way through high school.
You were
still yes, you were still, no matter what school you were at, there were other classes. Yes. So you would see everybody else.
Oh, you were just in this. Okay, gotcha.
But the certain classes, we were all in the same classes. Like I remember in junior high school, they said, well, to speak Spanish very well, you need to speak Spanish at lunch. And we would sit there and speak Spanish to each other, and all the other kids hated us. You didn't realize it at the time. Plus, my grandmother worked in the cafeteria, and she would sneak me special tuna sandwiches. And, Cece's, White Louise, my grandmother.
Yeah.
So the day of hairnets and the, pink Jello.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So we eventually, we made it through high school. Like I said, you get you have your trials and tribulations like everyone. You get picked on, bullied. By ninth grade,
Yeah.
there was a bunch of girls, sorority girls. They were the tough girls. They were the brown sorority, and they would pick on us, Um, and by the time I was in 10th grade, I was just like, yeah, I'm not putting up with anybody's bullshit anymore.
Yeah.
I'm just not. And so that changed my life as far as who I was inside and out, like, in my neighborhood. I said, I'm not putting up with this stuff anymore. You know,
Yeah.
I went from hiding in people's backyards to try to figure out how to get out of my neighborhood to just walking in front of them. I hung around with all the tough kids, even though I really wasn't a tough kid. It was my way of protecting, and then my girlfriends too. So it actually made me a better person because it made me not be so afraid. And once you become out of your shell and you're not so afraid, you know,
Yeah.
and don't give in to the intimidation, they don't bother you anymore.
Yeah.
Like, what are you going to do? You start standing up to people.
Yeah.
It turns you around a little bit. So
Hmm. Yeah, I was gonna ask how that affected you, and it sounds like you
it did
kind of
affect me a lot in high school, and you go through these periods where you feel like, honestly, I don't want to use the words I want to say, but you don't want to be here anymore when you feel like your whole neighborhood's picking on you, or, and people don't realize what they do to you.
Hmm.
And some of that carried on through college.
Yeah.
But I just ignored it and care less. You get to a point
Yeah.
where you just turn the page.
Yeah. Yeah. You take that and you kind of say, like you said, okay, I'm done taking this. Now I'm just gonna stand up for myself, and
Hmm.
it seems to subside once you kind of stand up for yourself.
Yeah.
Usually.
Once you start giving shit back or standing
Yeah.
up to people.
Yeah.
So, hate to say it, but so.
Yeah. Well, that's good. So you're in high school now, in ATC.
Yeah.
How is it? What's life like outside of school with your three younger siblings? From talking to them, it sounds like you're doing a lot with them, taking them places, doing stuff with them,
I
and
did the best I could. I mean, my parents were always working. Our Nani was going to school. I mean, they were always busy. Um, Things weren't like they were now that you got escorted any place. You were just on your own, and there was no cell phones. There wasn't even answering machines for a long time. And answer machine, you had to wait 2 days. Um, we grew up our house was a rental. I didn't really realize till I was older we never really had our own house. It just didn't affect me at all because I didn't feel like I wanted for anything, even though we didn't have a lot of money.
Mhm.
But, we had great parents and a good family, so I just never felt like wasn't I was lacking anything. But yeah, I was busy. I would do the best I could for my siblings. We would do stuff together. We'd do stuff for Nani and Papa together. Just always make sure that they were taken care of if I could. If Rose was going to school or Mickey hung around with me a lot. She'd come to my first apartment a lot. Um, Chris was a little bit distant with Chris because there's 9 years, like with you and Sam.
Mhm.
Um, so that was a little harder. But like I said, you're going through the motions, and then I was working from the time I was 14. So I pretty much just try to pay for everything on my own since that time. I never really try to, if my parents could give me something, they always did, but I never asked for anything unless I was desperate, because
Mhm.
they had 4 kids and they had rent to pay, and it was tough. It was tough. So, and you wanted to make sure they were taken care of, that, we always made sure we had cakes on their birthdays or their anniversaries, or, the kids, my mother and father were always good about remembering the kids, you know, special occasions. So it was always a big deal for us.
Mhm.
And my grandmothers were alive. My grandfathers were alive. So I'm lucky that I knew them all. And then I had aunts that I was close to on both sides and cousins.
Mhm.
Um, and then I graduated from high school. I was dating dad by then. So I ended up going to Suffolk. In the meantime, I was working at Woolworths. I started working at Woolworths in Boston when I was 15. That's where I met dad. Forged my birth certificate at the library with my friend Marie. And then
What did you just white out your
you
your
just
date
whited it
birth?
out. Yeah, she did a good job. She did hers, so she did mine. So I started working at Woolworths when I was 15. Um, whatever day the Iranian hostages got taken. I remember it was like November of like 79 or something. And I worked there all through high school and college, pretty much. I commuted after school, just waited outside for the bus to the Orange Line, got the train. That's what you did for like $2 an hour for waitress money.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I met a ton of people. It opened my eyes out to like this whole other world of people that lived outside of Everett, We used to hang around Faneuil Hall. We had a really good time.
Yeah.
And I was dating Dad then, and then I started going to Suffolk University, and then I was there for a year. I was doing work study, and then I was asked if I wanted the full-time position in the office. So I took that, and that helped me pay for school because now I switched to night school. So it took me an extra year to graduate. So that helped me get through college, and I ended up being at that job for 18 years. And I loved
Yeah.
that job.
So you were started as a work study at what office was it that you
The
were?
business office.
The business office. Okay, so they ran the business school.
No, no.
What's the
We
business office?
oversaw accounts payable, purchasing,
Gotcha.
travel, general ledgers type stuff.
Okay, so you
So
were in.
we dealt with everybody in the university, including the law school, school of management, university. So that's how I got to know everybody there. And that period of my life was probably the best time of my life.
Yeah.
Finishing college, I met college friends, but I also, would go out after work. It was different in the 90s and 80s,
Hmm.
Boston was different. I had a good job. And so I went from being a work study to a full-time employee to the manager of accounts payable. And eventually I was the associate business manager when I left, which was at 36.
Hmm. What was probably the thing you liked most about that job?
The people, it was fun. The job itself, it was hard, but I didn't wake up every day going, oh, I hate going to work today, like I do so many times in the past few years. I've
Yeah.
actually liked going to work, even when your kids were born, and I was still having to figure out the commute sometimes with the daycare. That got a little challenging with Dad's hours. So, but it was fun. We had parties. We had, it was a good job. I had a good boss. I probably had in and out for the 18 years I was there. I probably had at least 50 to 75 people who reported to me. A lot of good full-time employees. I had a lot of students come through the office, who some of them I've gotten back in touch with either through Facebook or LinkedIn. I'm still in touch with some of the people from Suffolk. So it was a great experience.
18 years. Wow.
Yeah.
Huh.
And the reason I left, like I said, I left after Georgie was born. It was just too stressful going to Boston every day. Like I said, Dad wasn't really around because of his business, so I just had to juggle it all, and it got to be a little bit too much.
Yeah, it's a lot to manage. A house full of three kids. Dad's
Going
gonna
into
visit.
Boston every day,
You're
yeah.
going into Boston every day. Over the rainbow can only cover so much.
Yeah.
It starts to get, and it's probably getting expensive too.
It was expensive, and you guys were in school by then too, like you and Frankie.
Yeah.
You were like in first grade when I left there. Frankie might have been in preschool and Georgie was just born. And
Yeah.
ironically, I went back to school when Sam was in first grade. So, around the same timing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fine. I think I remember going to work with you one time, unless I made this up. I feel like I remember going to work with you when I was younger
Yes.
to your office, and it was the one with the big square buildings downtown. I think is where you said you worked, was like at the top, and then we went in there.
Yeah. It overlooked. I had a kick-ass office at big windows. My own office was. I was just telling someone this today because I was just telling Lily actually because we were talking about the whole child steward thing. Um, but how I had big giant windows that overlooked the Tobin Bridge and the harbor, and
Yeah.
I was very lucky. The 90s were very good to me,
Yeah.
and in society, it was a good time.
Yeah. That's sweet. Yeah, big pimp daddy office in the top of Boston,
25th floor.
25th floor. Yeah, a place that now is probably like $1 million to just have that office or something crazy
Yeah.
like
Oh, I'm
that.
sure. If they're even full anymore.
Yeah, that's true. You're at Suffolk 18 years. So before we kind of went forward to, hey, 36 you leave, but before that you're working there. You and Dad move. Did you guys have a place in Everett before Revere?
So Dad and I started living together in Everett. I moved out when I was 18
Mm-hmm.
of my house in Everett, of my apartments, which is also going back to the whole Christopher thing that, I really didn't get to be around him a lot when he was younger.
Yeah,
As much as I could, I did, but I was also in college and working. So,
I know the
so like I
feeling.
said, it was important for me to stay in touch as much as I could, but it's hard.
Yeah,
But that's why doing the family things were so important. Like I said, the birthdays, the anniversaries, the parties, always getting together for dinners. And then we moved to Dorchester for a couple of years. Dad's friend Steve had a 3-decker there, and Valerie, his wife. So we lived there for a few years. They had a daughter, Lauren, and we eventually had a daughter, Samantha, who is our goddaughter. We just went to her wedding in St. Thomas. We stayed there for a couple of years. I commuted to Suffolk from there. I'd walk down to the Red Line station in South Boston. It was right over the line. And then we ended up with a dog that we weren't anticipating having. We already had a dog, Max, that we adopted. I had surprised Dad with it. Then we gave Dad's father, George, a dog, a German Shepherd, for like an occasion because he had lost one a couple of years before that. And the dog ended up being too much for him. So our landlord said, "Why don't you keep him?" Which shocked us. I wasn't even thinking about keeping him. I didn't even think about that. And they were like, "Yeah, you can have 2 dogs. It's okay." And I'm like, "Oh, great." So we took 2. We had 2. So in the meantime, Papa I didn't know he was doing this, but he was trying to get us to just buy a house instead of putting money into rent. So we found a house in Revere for us. And we ended up buying that house because it was better with the dogs and, rather than paying rent and all that. So our first house that we owned was on Malden Street in Revere. And that's where you were born.
There I was.
You know?
Yeah. I vaguely remember that place. I can like parse it together.
Yeah, you were 2 when we left. You have a good memory, though.
Yeah. Before I had all the head injuries, I remember a good. And then after that, it gets a little foggy. So
Yeah.
after the first grade, it starts going downhill. But no, it's good. So your dad are in Revere. You bought the place in Revere. Your favorite child was born, and you guys are hooking and jabbing there. You're still working in Boston. Dad's still working in Boston. Are you home with me during the day?
No.
Where am I? Am I with Donnie?
Where were you? Oh, you're with Laura.
Oh,
Look.
yes. I remember I think I was probably older at this point, but I remember going to her house in Everett and hanging out with Jeffrey. Medford, yeah, right over there off the highway.
Yeah. So
yeah.
she had Jeffrey just before you were born. So she had offered to be my daycare person. So now I was commuting to Medford in the morning to drop you off, and then I would go to Wellington every morning and commute in, go back to Medford, and then go back to Revere. But it worked out for me and for you, I think, because you run in a daycare center. Really, you were just with Jeffrey all day, and then I had the comfort of just having one person with you.
Yeah, and that continued when we moved to North Reading, right?
It did for a while, yes.
Yeah, because I remember doing that. There's no way I remember doing that before I was 2 years old, but I do remember running around with Jeffrey.
And we had somebody pitch in once in a while, like Nani would pitch in, or Dad's mom. I remember driving to Dorchester a couple of mornings, but if somebody couldn't take you, I'd go all the way over to Dorchester, then come back to Boston, back to Dorchester, back to you just do what you had to do.
Do what you can.
I did it every day. Just hit the ground running and go.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're in Revere, and you guys got your house got broken into. The dogs were in the basement. I remember you've told the story a few times. And what was that like?
That was terrible. We had only been living there a couple of months, and I came in, and the dogs we were keeping in the basement because they would tear up the house. So we had that big water jug full of change, that you collect.
Yeah.
And we kept it against the basement door because they would try to break out during the day. They even broke to a lock we had. So that would keep them down there. And the basement was big and open, so they could run around. It wasn't like they were deprived at all. So I went to move it to let them out, and it wasn't there. I'm like, well, that's weird. So I let them out of the basement, and then I'm looking around, and I'm realizing something's not right. So I went upstairs to my bedroom, which was probably stupid in retrospect because somebody still could have been in the house, but it was after work. And my bureau on my bed was my jewelry box and was all smashed open, like all open. And I didn't go in my room. I ran downstairs and I went on the phone, which was on the wall at the time, no cell phones. And I called, I don't remember who I called first, but I called my dad because he worked down the street. He came running up with a big baseball bat. He comes running in. I called the police. So they think maybe it had something to do with the people who lived there before. I can't be sure about that, but they came in, they took they took all my jewelry that I had, which wasn't anything crazy, but there was a couple of rings that were special to me. An initial that Dad had given me on a gold chain, like it was one of the first things he ever gave me. The water jug, which probably had a lot of money out of it. But one of the worst things they took was going back to my godchild. We had her christening at our house, the reception. And so I had a nice camera with all her pictures in it,
Oh
sitting
man.
at the front. They took the camera, so I never got those pictures developed. So I lost all my christening pictures from the church and from there. So
Hmm.
so after that, we put an alarm. Like we just always had alarms. Like that was on a main street by a school, and to think that somebody could do that with a
Yeah.
big giant water jug full of change, like you know,
Mm-hmm.
were they running down the street with this thing? Like how do they?
That
So
thing's heavy too. That thing's like 100,
I
probably
know.
200 pounds
Yeah, I know.
when it's
So
full.
I felt emotionally destroyed after that for a long time to think that somebody was in your house.
Yeah.
It took a lot out of me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot. And so you guys continued to live there though for a little while, or was that like you're like, you know what, we should probably get out of here?
No, we stayed there because that was right after we moved in. So that
Right.
was probably 89 or 90.
Okay, so you stayed there for like 4 more
And
years.
we stayed there till 96.
Yeah, 6 years. Yeah, because 96, right? Well, and what was your decision to sell it instead of rent it or anything like that?
Well, we wanted to sell it. We had a hard time. So we had gone to a wedding in July up in New Hampshire. And we were like, wow. And I always wanted to move to New Hampshire, but I never wanted to go like locally. I really did. Dad still regrets it to this day, but he didn't want to do it because of his business. He didn't want to go that far away from Boston, which I
That's
got.
fair. Yeah.
So we started looking for houses, outside the city. We found the one in North Reading. We had an agent that Papa had referred us to because we wanted to be up. Things were a little bit different than with the realtor world. So we wanted to be up in this area. So we, I think her name was Roberta. We had her looking for us. And one day, Dad and I were out on our own on a Sunday just looking at open houses, and we came across the one that we bought. And there was so many people in there. It was a split, but it was at the, as you know, on a dead end, and it was way beyond our means. So I remember we left there. We went to the ground round in Stoneham, which isn't there anymore with you, and we could go on the payphone calling our finance guy, the mortgage guy, to see if he could do it. He qualified us for more so we could buy the house. We made an offer on the house, long story short, and we got it. I was pregnant with Frankie. So that was a very stressful summer because I was pregnant with Frankie, trying to sell the house. Work was very stressful. My boss was out with a knee injury, so I was trying to help. We were trying to build the first dorms. So our office was very,
Oh God.
involved in that. It was busy. So, but we got the house. And come to find out, just as a side, that Rosemary Rosano was at that open house.
Oh wow.
And she bid on the house and she lost out to us. But we knew this years later when she came over for a football club meeting.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So, so that's in a nutshell. That's how we ended up dead. But that was a crazy long summer for us. And then I ended up going to labor with Frankie. We moved up in July. Frankie was not due till October. But I went into labor with her early. So I was in the hospital for a few weeks and she was born in September.
Yeah. A lot of stress. A lot of stress that time, man. Maybe why she
well,
came
because then
early.
you're moving. And then we couldn't sell the house. So we ended up renting it to people who turned out to be, that's just another podcast in itself.
Nightmare.
Yeah, they were terrible. Terrible.
Would they not pay, or were they just like?
Yeah, first they paid, then they didn't pay, then they took all our carpets out without a permission. It was just, they had people, and I found out they were renting, like up in the attic, they had all these cots, like they were renting out to students, and
Oh my God.
yeah, it was a nightmare. So, we were going through all of that while, pregnant and moving and trying to sell the car and trying to work full time, and
Yeah. Wow.
it was a lot.
How did you find these people who you rented to?
I don't remember.
No.
I think back then you put it out in the paper.
Yeah.
He was like a self-employed, carpenter. I called her work. She worked for like the MWRA or something. And I remember asking about it. They go, well, she comes to work every day. And I'm like, oh, that's kind of a weird answer, but does she pay her bills? And,
Yeah.
it was just like chasing them for rent every month. And
yeah. Forget it. So you guys sold it. You said, screw it.
Yeah, we sold it for less than, we lost money on it, but we just needed to get rid of it. It was a bad time.
Yeah.
So we ended up doing actually a short sale on it. But it was off, you know what I mean? It was off of our purview.
Off your books, just get it out of
We
the way.
couldn't be
It's
paying for
gone.
2 houses, so it was fine. We were
Yeah.
happy where we were.
Mm-hmm. Now you're in North Reading with little Johnny, little Frankie.
Yeah, Frankie came home. Frankie was born September 12th. She didn't come home for a couple of weeks, maybe 2 weeks, because she was a little preemie.
Mm-hmm.
Look at her now.
Yep.
Tall drink of water with those
Yeah.
model legs.
Yeah.
But she
Keeping
was
ass big
5'1"
and
when she was born, which isn't too bad. And but they had to keep her in the NICU. So that was tough, leaving her, there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and then we just moved into the house really when all this happened. So you never really had a chance to get your bearings in the new house,
Yeah. Yeah. You guys you had me and then Frankie and then George all within 6 years.
Yeah.
You had 3 kids under 6. Was that manageable? Was that too much? What do you?
They were all planned, so it was manageable. I mean, actually, right after you, before Frankie, we had actually planned to have another baby, and I had a miscarriage when we were in Malden Street.
Mm.
So, because that baby was supposed to be due in April. We were like, oh, Power Ranger birthdays for everybody, And then, I ended up having a miscarriage, so that was tough. And then got pregnant not long after that with Frankie, so that was good.
How far along were you for the not second child?
It's like, I think maybe, I'm going to guess and say 6 to 8 weeks. So,
I didn't know that.
yeah.
So you got us 3 hanging out in North Reading, and around this time, I think maybe Georgie was like 2 when we added on to the house.
No, she was an infant.
She was a
So
baby.
she was just born in April, and then, we just find the most stressful situations and just make them
What are you guys doing?
happen.
Yeah.
So we were looking for another house. It's funny, when we were looking for houses, I never wanted to have a split.
Yeah.
But then we found the house, we really liked where it was. And even my realtor said, well, I wasn't looking at splits for you, and you end up finding the split. So, long story short, we knew immediately when Georgia was coming, like there wasn't going to be enough room for what we wanted. So we were looking around in North Reading, and a lot of places for the bang for your buck, they didn't have a yard or they didn't have the privacy we had. We had a great location.
Oh yeah.
So, we decided just to stay where we were and add on. So Georgie was born in April. We started the process over the summer. We moved out in the fall. We didn't anticipate having to move out. A contractor was kind of a pain in the neck to work with. Another story. But they even took the roof off and didn't top it properly. I'm like, storm's coming. Oh, it'll be fine. And of course, everything got flooded. So we had to go to the insurance company and redo the walls, and it was crazy. Nothing went right. So we lived in a corporate apartment in Burlington for probably maybe 2 months. And that was around the time I left Suffolk in September. But in the transition period, I'm commuting from Burlington to Boston. I'm dropping kids off at daycare to Kelly in Everett. She's helping me out. Nani's helping me out in Everett. I still have Over the Rainbow. I have somebody at
Kelly. Oh
school.
my God.
It was crazy.
I forgot all about Kelly.
It was crazy. So and then I go to work all day and then have to what kids did I leave where today? And you're still trying to get their clothes, their lunches, and their activities, and just trying to manage it all. I remember Carol Baumgarten going, "Oh, I didn't see you at lunch today." I go, "What lunch?" She's just like, "Oh, I sat with John and Aaron. They had a lunch today at the school for." And I was like, "Oh, I missed something." Like, because I was working. Like, the guilt you feel as a parent, right? Like, thank God Carol was there to have lunch with you.
Carol.
It was like in first grade or something.
Yeah, what a
So
sweetheart.
you try to do as much as you can, but that was a crazy time period. And then I'm still trying to manage moving back into the house and living in the apartment in Burlington. And then we had trailers full of our stuff there. And, it was crazy time.
Oh, I know.
Leaving work was tough too, but I had to do it.
Yeah. And I'm sure we were just probably super insufferable because you got 3 kids who all just like, we're probably like starting to fight now, and we don't get why we're out of the house. And you're probably like running around all day and come home, and we're like, I want to go my house. And you're like,
Yeah.
shut up. You know? Not that I remember anything like that, but I'm assuming.
Yeah, I just remember
Yeah.
I remember you wanted to be able to ride. You kind of rode a bike a little bit late, and you wanted to be able to ride your bike. And I was like, all right, I got to teach this kid how to ride this bike. And we're over in Burlington, and we're trying to figure all that out. I'm like, just stupid little things that pop into your head that you remember.
Yeah.
Because I remember you just being upset because you just still couldn't figure out how to ride the damn bike. Not to out you or anything, but
No, I remember riding that little black and green bike down our hill. I think that's probably what did it to me. I was on training wheels and I rode it down our hill in North Reading and just wiped out super hard. And I was like, oh man,
yeah.
riding a bike's not fun.
But Georgie was with me constantly then because, you know, that's about the time I left work. Even it was a transition period when I was going into Boston. I would take her with me in her carrier, and then she wasn't someone who slept, so she would be crying at night in the apartment in Burlington, which was
Yeah.
stressful because there were other people around us. And then I just remember leaving her in a carrier to sleep in the bedroom that became hers eventually, like on the bed, and the doctor would be like, "She's fine. If she's sleeping, she's fine." I would take
Yeah.
to leave her in her seat.
I do remember that she would really only sleep in the car. I remember that.
Yeah.
I remember you would always say that. I remember we'd be in the car and we'd listen to that CD that I think Auntie Ann made it for her christening, Jordy's christening or something.
Oh, first birthday. Dad's assistant had made that. Claudia, she put it all
Oh,
together with all the different songs for her first birthday.
that was funny. Yeah.
Yeah, that was
That might have,
that was good.
yeah.
I still have one or two.
Yeah.
But
That
I
was a
got
good.
tendonitis in my wrist because I was carrying her so much. I had to get shots in my wrist. And then do you remember, like, we'd come home when we eventually were back in the house? We lived with Auntie Gail for like a week or two, like 2 weeks as well, because we had to give up the apartment.
We were with Nani too, and then Auntie Gail.
I think you guys were, yeah, I think we were splitting up. Nani had
We
the
were all
dog.
we were all over the place. We were shotgun nuts to the wind for this
There was like
stupid.
a 2 week period, and then Christmas was coming. And I really want to be back in by Christmas. And I remember Bill, God bless our neighbors, Bill and Laurie, Bill coming over and trying to help us clean up and get things set just so we could be back in the house for Christmas. And it was a very trying time, but we made it through.
Yeah, made it through. Place came out great. I know there was like some issues. Dad was
Yeah, there were a
saying
lot of
that
issues, but
you're a builder, and he's took a couple
yeah,
shortcuts and this, that, and the other thing. But
all in all, it was
overall,
fine. And then
yeah,
we changed some few things afterwards, but that was different. Those with Jimmy Trider, so
yeah,
which were good. Those were good things.
yeah. So we're all back in the house. And when did you start the Christmas Eve tradition of going to our place? Was that like the year after that?
That was actually in Revere.
Oh, okay.
You probably just don't remember, but people would
Nope.
start. Yeah, once Dad and I bought our house, we started having Christmas Eve at our house because Nani and Papa used to have it. Um, and then we started having it at our house in Revere,
Nice.
and it used to be bigger and bigger. As people get older, they go in their other directions. But so we had it for years. Auntie Rose, near towards the end, had a couple of them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, the big Christmas Eve at our place. Me and Georgie were talking about how we'd go over to Auntie Rose's house usually the night before
yeah, that helped me out a lot.
Christmas Eve, just to
Yeah,
basically occupy us so you could get the house ready.
it was a lot because I was working full time then most of those years.
Yeah.
So I had like 1,000 gifts to wrap and buy, and it was a lot. I mean, and I'm probably not exaggerating because if you think about how many gifts you all got, plus stocking stuff, plus all the relatives and teachers and bus drivers and coaches, and it was a lot. So
Yeah.
you're trying to work and buy out, and online shopping wasn't really a thing then.
No.
So you had to physically go out and do all of it and figure it out and then host Christmas Eve, which I love. Don't get me wrong. It's not a complaining about it. I mean, it was a lot of work doing all of it, but I loved having people Christmas Eve and Christmas Day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's a lot of
A lot of
people's.
good memories.
Yeah. Yeah. And talking to everyone, it seems to be one of their favorite family traditions is coming over our house for Christmas Eve. So, um, definitely a good thing.
And it makes me feel good. It made me feel good then that people wanted to come,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and be
because a lot of
random
times
people.
Christmas for people or Thanksgiving isn't really, their thing and with their family. So I'm glad that, we've all had our stuff through the years, but I'm so blessed with my family,
Mm-hmm. Pull in whoever's around wants to come over, who isn't part of the family, but they're just maybe not doing anything.
Right.
Like yak or whoever,
Yeah, who's ever around, just
Yeah,
come.
whoever's hanging out.
Everybody's welcome.
Yeah, yeah. So that was great growing up. I mean, the stress for Thanksgiving I think was more for the kids because we weren't going anywhere before because it was like school the day before, so that was always like a nightmare. But Christmas Eve was good
What do you
because
mean Thanksgiving was stressful? Because that was no gifts or anything. What, helping me get plates out?
it was always just like chaos in the house the day before. Like
Yeah, probably because I was working.
yeah,
Yeah, I remember
but
you
it
guys
was,
were like, "Oh, we have to get the plates out." Oh, I know.
yeah,
That was about it, though. There's no gifts. There's no. You guys didn't cook. You guys didn't have to do any of that.
yeah.
Yeah, we had
Well,
a
it was,
housekeeper a lot of those years.
yeah. Well, it was usually just I think the vibe the day before was usually
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
it was
Because you
just
see,
like anger and chaos and not you know
non-conforming.
yeah, and then once the pasta's flowing and papa's cooking it's all good, but
Yeah.
up until then, crazy but
What did you
that's
say? Up
good.
until Christmas.
No, I said up until then, up until the pasta's cooking, then it's all good.
Relax time.
Yeah,
Well, it's like those TikTok videos you guys send me with the mother running around crazy.
yeah.
Like, you know,
Gotta look like no one
Kind
lives here. Like there's 6 people who live here. Take the
yeah, well, that
kitchen
was my point.
table and put it in the closet. Pull up the carpets, pull them up, roll them up, and put them outside.
Put it back out.
Yeah,
Get the ice, get the buckets.
yeah. What are these
Well, I guess
dishes
that
doing?
was my point. There were 6 people who lived there, but a lot of times it was just like one. You know,
Yeah, yeah.
where is everybody?
Shotgun nuts to the wind.
No, I think that explains why nobody wants those Thanksgiving dishes. It's probably like nightmare.
It is. Yeah, it's like bad memories. It's like bad juju.
Oh, come on. We had great Thanksgivings, though.
Like I said, the day before Thanksgiving was one way, and then Thanksgiving was great.
Yeah. I
But
think it was because I was working through those years. I just couldn't
yeah,
find the time.
yeah. And then when did you stop? You took a break, pausing the action. Was that when Sam was born?
No.
For working, I mean, not Christmas.
Oh, I thought you meant for the holidays. I'm like, we still
No,
did Thanksgiving. Okay. Um, when Sam was like 5 or 6, I went back to work.
gotcha. When Sam was 5 or 6. Okay, and that was like, were you in town or was that sea change? You went back into town first, right?
I went to Sea Change, good memory. And then I went to, that was in Peabody. I worked
Yeah,
in the business office there. Joan Crotty worked there and she recommended me for the job. So I went there. It was a very different place to work, but it was fine. It was, good way for me to get back into the workplace. And I learned a lot because a lot of stuff had happened while I was home with computers and stuff. I mean, I worked on computers, but not like on all these, you know, Microsoft or suites or, Excel and all these things. So it was a good learning curve for me to come back that way. Um, and it was a busy place. And then, money wise, it just wasn't enough for me. And I just needed to do something different. So I knew that Lorraine, who was my original work study supervisor when I was 18, before I went to the business office, she was the dean of the law school, the associate dean. I knew she was looking for somebody for a while. So Gail had worked for her, and so did Mark. So I reached out to her, and she had worked for me before. She knew my work ethic, and that I think I had a good reputation before I left. So she had me come in and we interviewed, and I knew it was going to be a tough job. I knew the hours were going to be long because you oversaw law school exams
right.
and
I mean, the process.
registrations, and you helped with commencement. And that office had their hand in everything, everything. And Lorraine, ran it like, with a lot of structure. So it was a hard place to work in, but it was a learning experience, and I did enjoy it. to a certain extent. Like I said, the hours were long. Going back into Boston was tough, but I did find some commuting buddies that I was commuting with. I was either taking the bus or I was, which sometimes was trying in a snowstorm, waiting for the bus in downtown Boston, freezing. And we also did some car commuting, which was nice. So I was there for maybe 3 years, and I enjoyed it. It was nice being back, at Suffolk, seeing some of the old people who used to work there was still there. But it got to be too much with some of the stuff that was going on at home as well for me to be in Boston.
Yeah.
So, but allowed me at that time to make a little bit more money and just, which was good at the time, just to kind of, reset.
Mm-hmm.
Reset everything because everybody was in college or still in high school, and except for Sam was younger, and it helped.
Yeah. I feel like it's always stressful. There's always like something else going on.
Yeah.
It's one kid's in college now, one kid's in high school, and then there's two kids in high school. Then we kind of rotated through high school.
Yeah.
I think there was no, Georgie and Sam missed each other by a year, didn't they?
Yeah, they did, which is too bad.
Yeah, because me and Frankie were there.
I screwed
Georgie
up
and
on the
Frankie
timing of that, I guess.
couple months late, January. But
so I would say Sam was raised. I would say it takes a village. A lot of people helped me with Sam.
Yeah.
Like getting him to hockey practice.
Yeah.
And I've told people through the years, how grateful I was. So hopefully they know that, how much I appreciated the help. Half days. People would call and remind me, there's a half day tomorrow. Like Kim would call and remind me. Or text me, there's a half day tomorrow. Do you want me to take Sam? Like, there's a half day tomorrow? Yes, please. And thank you,
Yeah.
So
that's probably
fortunately
why
he was a good, easy kid to be around. He was a good kid. So
yeah, that's probably
people
why he
enjoyed
is
taking
like
him.
he is.
Yeah, that helped me a lot.
Yeah.
It helped us as a family,
Yeah.
I could continue working when I needed to be working.
Yeah. Explains how he's probably so personable and how everyone knows who he is because he was just a man of the people.
Well, I remember second grade, he was like principal for the day. I'd bid on the thing at the auction. Like one day this kid's gonna be like mayor of the town.
Yeah. Yeah, he was like wrestling captain in 6th grade of the whole in like the 4th grade of the
I
whole
was
middle
younger,
school
yeah.
team. Yeah, I was like, what the hell's going on? So but yeah, it's old Sammy boy. But yeah, similar to you and Uncle, that 10-year gap, you kind of miss out a little bit. Like you're 16, you're a teenager, and they're like just like little babies basically. And then you leave for school or you get your own apartment or do whatever, and then you kind of they're living, but you're kind of also living. And you kind of miss out on
and I wasn't living in that space anymore. Once I was 18, I never went back home. Whereas at least you guys got to always come back home in between. So at least you were engaging like on that same level.
Yeah.
And seeing what their space was, even on the holidays or whatever. And I didn't get that. So, so that was, once you move out, you move out. It wasn't like I went away to college. I was at college, but I was
community
in my
college.
Place. Yeah. I was working at the college, right?
Yeah. No, that's good. And then Auntie Gail, she was at Suffolk for a long time. Did she retire out of Suffolk? Did she just work there a long time? What?
She was there a long time. She started out in the registrar's office in the college. So she worked right down the hall for me, which was great. And then I could always get my grades early, and see. And then she left. She actually, I shouldn't say she started in the college registrar's office. I think she actually worked as like a secretary in the sociology department. And then I think she somehow went to the college registrar's office. I think she left for a little bit, and then she ended up in the law school, which is the job I eventually took, working for Lorraine. And then she was, when she left the last time, I think she was working part-time in an art gallery and doing some things like that. And she also had worked at a doctor's office for a long time as well. I think it was Dr. Fiorello.
Nice.
I mean, honestly, I think if she could still be working, she would be. But unfortunately, her circumstances have changed health-wise, so she couldn't do it.
Yeah, I almost ran into her relative the other day, I guess. Met some guy, Paul Brickley. Who has family in the area, I guess, but it's close. He's like,
Isn't
I
that
was like,
weird?
no. It's like, do you know Bobby Brickley? He's like, no. It's like, people always ask me if I know Andy Brickley. I'm like, yeah, Andy Brickley, the announcer. He's like, yeah. It's like, he's kind of like my aunt's cousin or something. They're distant relatives. He's like, oh, what the heck? So, but he said he had family in North Reading, which I thought was funny. So,
That's awesome.
I'll pull the string on that. Yeah, yeah. Um, so you get all your kids. They're all over town. They're like a household name in North Reading, probably since you got four of them.
I hope for the right reasons.
Yeah, reviews may vary, I suppose, depending on the interactions they've had. But Sam coming up behind me and Frankie and Georgie, has like every person in North Reading probably knows him at that point, or has known about one of their siblings. Frankie probably got the shortest end of the stick coming up through like high school, and they're like, oh, I know your brother, and then
Yeah,
Georgie probably
maybe.
got like, oh, I know your sister, and
Right,
Sam probably benefited from the suite of us,
right. Yeah,
which
and he
is fun.
made his own name though too.
Oh, for sure.
It's so funny.
Yeah. I wonder where the hockey bug came from.
So I want to blame Phineas. I think he talked him into it. Phineas Mitchner. He's in the service now. He was a goalie too, and actually they faced each other as goalies because he moved to Linfield. So
Mm.
I got to see that game, which was great. In their senior years. But I told Laurie, his mom, years ago, I blame Phineas for talking Sam into it, like in second grade. I'm like, hockey? And I remember only being in my 40s then. I'm like, I had to bend over and tie his skates. I'm like, oh man, couldn't have been my older kid. It had to be you. I have to fit the skates. And I remember his coach Mark used to laugh at me. I used to be like, I'm too old to be doing this.
Did they meet through Cervisi's? I feel like Phineas was at Cervisi's or something like that.
Oh, I don't remember.
I feel like
But
that's what
Sam was there for a hot second, though.
I feel like I know Phineas from Cervisi's martial arts.
Maybe.
I could be making that up, but
Yeah, you and Georgie really didn't stay. I mean, Georgie and Sam didn't really stay in the karate.
yeah, me and Frank stayed for a little while.
You guys did very well.
Yeah, we were there for a long time. Probably like 6 years or something, I imagine.
Hey, but well, she got a brown belt. You had your black belt, or your second degree black belt, actually.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember going to Cape Cod for like the black belt test. And
Yeah, that was awesome. Sean was there too. Carricker.
Yeah. Got that sweet sword. Funny memories. Yeah, so you've kind of like kept the family together, like the glue, I would say, to make sure that we're all kind of staying together and following up with people. And you always text us, is this person's birthday? Is this person's anniversary? It's, and then we never write it down, so you have to remind us every year. But talking with Dad, he's like, oh, your mother handled everything. She kept the family together. I just kind of like did all the other stuff. Like doing Boston, doing outside work and stuff like that. It's like the family stuff was all your mom. So the reason you guys are close is because of your mom keeping everybody together. He's like, I had nothing to do with that, because I was like, the Elliott side of the family we're not as close to. We tried. You tried.
I tried for a long time.
Roping them
I
in
could
and
sleep at
bringing
night.
them in. Yeah. But the Gentile side, we're very close. Which is great to have at least one side that we can call regularly. I FaceTimed Monty Rose last night because she sent me some Christmas stuff, so I just opened it with her and
Oh,
Jake.
that was nice.
Yeah. But what's kind of been your approach to maybe like motherhood, and also as just a member of the family, to kind of building that close knit family?
Well, and I want to say I was kind of that in between. I'm going to say I don't know if sandwich is the right word. Parent that years ago you just kind of did it, right? And I was kind of in that period of like at the tail end of doing that when dads just started really becoming involved in helping,
Right.
And now, post my generation, I'm going to say, if that's the right word, dads are all in. They do just as much, most of them. So I kind of was on the tail end of that, so I didn't get as much as that. So I didn't have an approach to motherhood. I only, I didn't sit there and say, well, what's my approach to motherhood going to be? And I need to think about this. And what kind of mom am I going to be? You just did it, right?
Yeah.
And circumstances changed all the time. You have another baby, you have a miscarriage, someone else is sick, somebody dies, you get in a new house, somebody, happy things happen and terrible things happen along the way. So there's no perfect planning for anything. I think I just did what I could, from what I knew. Oh, it wasn't always right, but
Sure. No one gets
right.
it 100%.
I don't have any tissue.
No one knows what they're doing,
Well, I think now people, I think with social media and online resources and that type of thing, you have more resources. People talk about things more. There's not stigmas about things. And I don't mean there were stigmas with me, but I'm saying even like say somebody had postpartum depression or whatever, right? I
Right.
mean, people just talk about everything now. I mean, I grew up in a kind of an old school Italian family where everything was a secret. No one talked about anything. They really didn't.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna cry. So stupid. So if I could approach things differently, I probably would have done things a little differently. But, I was probably more of a reactive parent than a proactive parent. Sometimes,
What do you
I
mean
don't
by
know.
that?
I don't know.
Yeah. Is there any like lessons that you take away from raising 4 kids that you would pass on to, a new parent or
Well, I
someone
was
new
always rushing
in
because
the
I always felt like I had, you don't realize it till after when it's over, right?
goes by quick.
We're gonna have to cut all this out. Well, like they say, the days are long, but the years are short.
Yeah.
No, I just think, like I think you're a product of, the environment before you. Like dad's a product of his parents, and
Right.
who are a product of their parents. Like you can't. There's no blame. It's just who you are. It'd be the
Yeah.
same thing, like the household you grew up to. Maybe there was a lot of yelling, or maybe there was a lot of this. So when you get to that next generation, then one day you wake up and you go, oh my God, I need to do things a little different. I need to reset.
Mm.
So some things I wish I did. I did better.
Mom, you did great. You did great. You raised 4 great, healthy kids that are all doing great. Yeah. And if
Anyway,
anything, I just want, I'm not, this isn't the blame game at all. It's just more
no, no,
like,
no.
hey, you did so great with what you had and what you did. It's just,
I just think, nowadays people can approach things differently because they have more resources. They're not afraid to, you hear things more, and you appreciate things more, and you maybe have more patience, or there's more resources for you to do things.
Mhm.
I don't know if that makes any sense, but
It makes sense. I mean, and that's almost a good and a bad thing because there's so much that I feel like you can put undue pressure on yourself to be like, oh well, you compare yourself. Well, this person does this so well, or what do I do? And you ask 10 people, and it's almost simpler to not have
yeah,
so much information as you just say, oh well,
right.
this is what I think. This is my morals, and this is how I'm going to do this thing. Not like,
Well, that's what I think. I was more of a moral person.
yeah, what are your values, and then you just keep in line
Yeah.
with that if you can.
Like I said, I grew up in an environment where things, no one really talked about things, but, there was a lot of sometimes volatility. It's just the environment you're in.
Hmm.
So you hope you don't pass it a lot, but sometimes you do, or you
Yeah,
bring it.
yeah. I mean, you always kind of raise us with the general um, framework of like be nice to everybody, say thank you, like be very polite. That's kind of how I think we
Well,
all were
people say
very
I have the most polite children.
yeah, we're all very polite to everyone we met. If nothing else, we anytime we meet anybody, very very polite. Not quite man and sir, but that's not really a northern thing. But um, pleases and thank yous, things like that.
Yeah.
As someone who worked a lot in a lot of different jobs, and dad working full time in town with business, is there any lessons that you would pass on as far as like a work life balance, what's important, how things you did right, things you could have done better? Is there a work life lesson that you learned at all?
I mean, if I could turn back time, I probably would have tried to do things financially a little bit different. I feel like we were always ahead of the game, but then I would look back and I'm like, I don't know how I could have changed that because we didn't have the resources like that other people have. We didn't, have we didn't come from backgrounds where people had financial stability or
Right.
money or inheritances or anything like that, or anybody to help us with school or put a down payment on a house or anything like that. So when you're going through it, you're like, oh, I'm ahead of my mortgage. I'm doing great. I'm doing this. I'm doing that. But, which was always good. And there was a period of time that we dipped for a little bit. That's when I went back to work because, the economy slowed down. Dad's business, wasn't very busy for a while. Um, so that's when I went back to work. But, woulda, shoulda, coulda. I wish we had invested in something years ago. Bought another property or a rental property or done something like that. But that's hard for me to say to your generation because maybe you might be able to do it. I don't know, but a lot of kids can't.
Mm-hmm.
It's so expensive now.
I know.
Everything's so pricey.
Mm-hmm. For now, at least, but we'll see.
Say it again.
For now, at least, hopefully. I mean, I don't think it'll ever go down. If they can
Yeah.
charge much for something, why make it cheaper, right? So, yeah.
So I guess my advice would be just to try to, as far as parenting and your future goes, just try to smell the roses a little bit more along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate the time you have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and if you could invest a little bit more, try to do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I do tell Georgie and Frank, Sam that all the time.
Yeah. 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 It'll be an interesting next few years for sure. Yeah, one of the themes I keep talking about and all the different people I talk to in the podcast is that the dynamic of the family is changing a little bit. We went from like a young
Yeah.
family, now we're kind of like a middle aged family, where
Yeah.
it's like that next generation is on the cusp of being there. Everyone's kind of doing this thing. Jordy's in nursing school, Samantha's in nursing school, Sam's starting his career, Jake's starting his career, and all the babies aren't babies anymore. And
No.
it's almost mom's turn to grandmas, aunts turn to great aunts, grandmas turn to great grandmas. So it's interesting. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the next few years with the family and how the dynamic changes and the new traditions we
Yeah.
start, and it's going to be very interesting to see 5 years from now, 2029, we'll call it, kind of where we are and who's around and whatever.
Yeah, hopefully we'll all be here.
Hopefully we'll all be here. Yeah, see where we're at in the country. Because who the hell knows where everyone's going to be shotgunned out to, and it'll be interesting to see kind of where everyone's at.
Yeah, the state of the world is a concern as well. So
Yeah, that's an interesting point as well, is what's going to happen outside of our family and how it's going to influence everything, and we'll see.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What is something you would say that you admire about, individually, about each one of your kids?
But think about this. There's lots of things. So I guess with you, I was telling somebody this the other day that there's lots of things I admire in you. But I guess I admire the fact that you're a great son. You're a great big brother. You stay engaged with everybody in the family. When you were in middle school, I just thought you were going to end up in jail. So, the fact, that you've turned out to be the person you are is just amazing to me.
Hmm.
And I'm going to start crying again. So, so that's something, I know that's just not one thing, but I just admire the person you've become, and the maturity and the respect, the people have for you.
Mhm.
Frankie, I admire, she's always just been fiercely independent. And I admire, that in her and her willingness just to be a free spirit and do what she feels in her heart that she wants to do. You may not always agree with it. But as long as she's happy, then I'm happy.
Mhm.
Because you're worried about everybody's future.
Right.
And that's what her and I talked about the other day. And she's like, but like how this world's going to be. And she's like, I just want to live and enjoy my life and see what happens from there. So I do admire that in somebody, because a lot of people are totally opposite, just worried all the time.
Mhm.
So I think the fact that she's just fiercely independent and a free spirit is awesome. Georgie, oh, she's a tough one. I admire a lot of things about Georgie. I admire that, obviously the obvious things like that she's gone back to school and she's gone to nursing school, but she's overcome a lot.
Mhm.
And I don't know what you would. Trying to think of the word.
Perseverance, maybe, or
What did you say?
perseverance.
Perseverance. I mean, she does have perseverance, but I just admire her tenacity, maybe, that she's been able to come over some things, and she keeps going.
Mhm.
And and she's very smart, as of all of you. And she's just putting her nose to the grindstone and getting things done.
Mhm.
And Sam, oh God, I think Sam we already talked about. I admire. There's a lot of things. I feel like all the time we're always like, Sam, do this, Sam, do that. He's the baby, and he's around, so everybody's always kicking him down.
Yeah.
But he's an awesome kid, and proud to be his mom. And he's it's crying again. He's just a kind-hearted, good kid.
Yeah.
So we're all lucky to have him.
Yep. Love Sammy. The baby of the crew, but
Yeah, and he's very he's very intuitive too.
Mhm.
So he just he gets it, even though he acts like he doesn't. He gets it.
He gets it. Yeah. Well, good. I think that's basically everything, Ma. I mean, we got the next few years coming up. Like I said, we talked about before. See what happens, and what are you kind of looking forward to most in the next few years?
Well, I think since we sold a house, that I've become kind of I was excited to finally sell the house and be out and be I did get to travel a little bit this summer. But I've become a little bit stagnant because I haven't pushed the button on what I want to do yet. So I need to, after the new year, just push the button on what I want to do, which is move,
Mm-hmm.
find a full-time job, um, and travel, if I can, because, the way things go in life, you just don't have much time you have.
Mm-hmm.
So that's important to me. Um, I would like to, establish another home base so we can have Christmases again, when people are around. I miss my dad.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't change that, but
No.
maybe I can start establishing some new traditions.
Mm-hmm.
Lucky to have my mom here, so I see her every day, and then we drive each other crazy. Um, so I would like to get like, resettled someplace. I don't feel settled here.
Right.
You know, and figure out what our next steps would be, and hopefully I'll have the time to do that.
Good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to you guys settling down somewhere, calling
You just
somewhere
want to
else
give me some
home.
shit back out of storage.
Like this giant table I'm sitting at. Uh, yeah, so it'll be good to get you guys settled and not in this kind of transitory
Yeah.
spot. But we'll see what happens and where you guys end up.
Yeah.
Good. Well, thanks for chatting, Ma.
Sorry about crying.
That's okay.
Can you edit me to not look so red?
Yeah, I can
Sure.
probably get an emoji over your face or something like that.
That's perfect. Can it be Cindy Crawford?
Yeah, sure, whatever
I
you
love
want.
Cindy
Like when
Crawford.
you
She's
FaceTime, you can
beautiful.
make yourself a giraffe or something. I'll do that.
Giraffe. God.
Yeah,
Okay.
cool.
I'm sorry
Uh,
for I was watching this as my nose is running, but
cool. Yeah, I think we're good. I think that was a great episode, Ma.